Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Stephan Kesting. This is Brett Piperni. Thank you so much for coming down, Brett.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Brett, why don't we start with this? You've got a ton of medals in Taekwondo, and we're going to shoot a little bit of Taekwondo stuff right after we do this, which is why you're wearing the gi. You don't always, or do you always walk around like this?
Not always. Not always.
I just need some milk. Go down to 7-Eleven. You were saying that the medal you're proudest of is a bronze medal.
Yes,
and
sir.
so why are you proudest of a bronze medal after your entire Taekwondo competition career?
Yeah, I know it doesn't sound like much. And it's incredible the things in life that maybe the smallest thing may turn out to be the greatest thing for you. Mm-hmm. And that was that medal. And to give you some context, it came after having 3 specialists in North America tell me that I'd never trained martial arts again in my entire life.
Well, they were experts.
They were experts.
Well, why did they tell you this?
So about 15 years ago, training martial arts, everything was A-OK at my prime. And I started to feel a little illness that just, it kind of compounded and got worse and worse and worse to a place.
What did it start as? Just not feeling good?
Yeah, not feeling well. Like initially it was, food poisoning type of symptoms. Went to see some doctors and they said, okay, Brett, you've obviously got food poisoning. Have some bananas, drink lots of water. You know the routine here. Rest, and we'll fast forward a month. Those symptoms never diminished. They were constant, and it was actually starting to get worse. And you keep moving forward. It just started to deplete. Of course, not being able to eat anything or not wanting to eat anything. You understand the impacts and the ramifications that this has on training and everything that you're working towards. And at the time, I was training extremely hard, competing for a national level to try to make it to an international competitions, and it was all gone in an instance. And
you're already a skinny guy, so your weight must have just plummeted.
I did. I went from 165 and I went all the way down to 130 at my lowest.
Wow.
Yeah.
At a height of 6'1".
6'1". Yeah, and then to compound the weight loss, of course, because I couldn't eat, now all of a sudden my hair started falling out, my toenails, my fingernails, super weak and brittle, just no nutrients whatsoever.
How old were you?
At the time it was the worst. I was, I was about 24 years old.
Wow. Yeah. So just when you're supposed to be in the prime of life, you're walking around like an 80-year-old man.
Exactly. And there was even days where I just couldn't even get out of bed. Like, and when I talk about those dark days, I talk about depression as an understatement. Having your life dedicated to a specific thing, martial arts for me.
And you'd been training since you were just a little kid.
Yeah,
right?
I started when I was 4 years old.
Okay, well, we'll get into that after. But so you've been training for 20 years, and now your life's just going down the shitter.
Gone. And so we fast forward, and it takes essentially almost 2 years for doctors to actually diagnose my problem, which was called gastroparesis.
What is gastroparesis?
It's a delayed emptying of the stomach. So essentially, in the lower portion of your stomach, where your colon releases food into your digestive tract, mine was basically sealed shut. So now imagine eating food, anything you intake would now sit in your stomach, decompose and rot to a place where eventually it has to pressurize out.
Right.
And now I'm trying to digest rotten food with 0 nutrients.
Right.
And like I said, there's your food poisoning ramifications.
Okay.
So taking in 3,000 to 4,000 calories as an athlete, to absorbing now only maybe 200 to 400 calories. This is why the drastic weight loss and the huge decline in overall health.
What causes gastroparesis?
It's so at the current thought process still it was related to a neck injury that did damage to what's called the vagus nerve.
Oh, right. That's the nerve that connects the brain and the stomach.
Exactly.
It's this huge nerve.
Big nerve. There's a lot of things that are going back to the vagus nerve still to today. And they believe I had an injury at some point previously, way back in the day, which was a car accident related injury, which now they still believe is the cause to gastroparesis.
Wow. Who would think that an injury to the head neck would cause permanent food poisoning?
Exactly.
I mean, it's just a theory, though. It could be something different.
Absolutely, it totally could. This is, again, the current thought process
Sure.
still. Things evolve as always, and technology evolves, so I don't know.
So the vagus nerve would be involved in the stomach or the gut opening up and passing material on.
Exactly, telling the lower colon to release the food into the digestive tract.
Okay.
So when things are down and out, and all of a sudden martial arts is taken away from me,
Right.
training is taken away from me,
Right.
weight loss, now visually I'm clearly looking ill. Mm-hmm. How does somebody go from training at an elite level to nothing and not have it impact them?
Right, of course.
It absolutely destroyed me. And it took that 18-month span of just a constant decline in health, and doctors at certain points were, hey, try this, let's do that. And, I tried to stay positive, but we've got to be brutally honest here. Like, when you have your life taken away from you, essentially, and you're living essentially like a live nightmare. There'd be days where I think I'd be dreaming, and I'd open my eyes and I'd be like, wait a second, this is reality still. So it weighed on me.
So it went pretty dark.
It went dark.
You must have thought about suicide.
Absolutely. The worst time was when I'd see my family come in. Of course, they're helpless and they want help. They're willing to do whatever. And I had such an incredible support group, but seeing the look on their face.
Now you're causing pain to other people as well as pain to yourself.
Exactly. And it ruined me to see the pain of my family and the close support group that I had, see the pain on their face, and understand that they're suffering now because of what I'm dealing with. Really took its toll on me.
So how did you get through that?
Well, right now, still to this day, I'll always be forever grateful. But it was a combination of two things. The first thing was the discipline behind my martial arts training. And it was, for every action, there's an equal or greater reaction in martial arts. This is our whole discipline. So I'm being told by 3 specialists now, Brett, you're never going to train martial arts again. You need to understand that and get that through your head.
Sorry, just to interrupt there. They were saying you're never going to train again because you were just so weak.
Exactly.
Because if you push yourself and you burn an extra 100 calories, you're going to die because you're going to go into mega caloric deficit.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and the big thing is that, again, because there's no cure and the state that I was at and how fast I was declining, I was holding on to martial arts and they were trying to tell me, let go.
Okay.
Because it's only having a worse impact on your mental health now.
Okay.
So for every action, there's an equal, greater reaction. I've now got 3 specialists who are telling me something that started subjective and now is objective, that chances are I'm never going to train martial arts again. To me, I said, as we talk about, they're the experts, I got to follow what they say. But something clicked. And it happened one day when I was walking down the street and I'd had enough being stuck in the house. And I walked up to a crosswalk and I went to go push the crosswalk button. And as I did, I looked over and there's this dark thought about how is this happening to me? Like, at the time I'm 24 years old, the best shape of my life. I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I take care of myself, I train at the highest levels. How could this possibly happen to me? And as I pushed this button, I looked to my left and there's a teenager in a wheelchair and he has no arms and no legs. And he looks back at me and he smiles.
So if he can smile.
Exactly. If he can smile, so can I. When I take in the discipline, the reaction of martial arts, and that moment of enlightenment, eye-opening, being mindful, and I put them together, I said, there's so much more to life. There's so much more to everything else that I've entirely neglected. And I was stuck in my head in that dark place. And right from that moment, things changed.
Really?
It was like
it's amazing.
Somebody flicked a light switch, and all of a sudden, my entire perspective to life entirely changed. The slightest things, even like I said, it felt like it got brighter out. The grass was greener, and I'm not talking
literally, not metaphorically.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about metaphorical stuff. Like all of a sudden, it was like celebration time. But it's just incredible. Like this weight lifted off my shoulders. And I don't know if anybody's felt that, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people can relate, that I just had a moment to breathe. And it just felt nice, like at peace. And that's when things started to change for me.
Then what continued? Like, how did you continue that? Yes, you felt better, and that resulted in, or that allowed you to do?
Yeah, so here's the great part, and this is part of the things that I do today, is let's say you go to a seminar, or you watch a movie, a motivational movie, or read a book, and you feel great. You feel incredible, you're going to take on the world, and then you go to bed, and the next morning you wake up and you said, I'll do that later. And I realized I'm
going to go for a run tomorrow.
Exactly. It's raining outside, it's not going to happen.
Oh, it's too hot.
Or it's too hot. And, with that being said is when I realized that when you have enough leverage, or your why is as important, when you're pushed to that have-to state as I reference, or your back's against the wall and you have no other options, when there's only one decision to make, it's incredible what the humans are capable of doing.
What do you mean by the have-to state?
I believe everybody has a breaking point. So when there's no other options, you have to do this, you can get it done. It's not, I want to do this or I need to do this. It's I have to do this. So if you eliminate all other options, It's like going to the grocery store and you got 10 different options to choose from when you want to buy orange juice. If there's only one there, you're going to get that orange juice if you want orange juice. So when you have to do something, it's incredible what we're capable of doing.
So this is the equivalent of the story about the mother lifting the car off her child.
Absolutely.
The kid's going to die, or you lift the car off the kid.
Two options, right?
Yeah.
You're making the decision.
Yeah. Two options. There's really one option.
Exactly. You're not going to let your child die. You have to lift this car, and she did it.
Right.
And that's exactly what I speak about. And that's why when that leverage is there, when you realize that if you want to live your life a certain way, and you're pushed no other options, and your back's against the wall, I promise you'll find a way to get it done.
So how did you get it done? Because you're back, you're training, you competed, you got that bronze medal. So take us through that arc.
Yeah, when I talk about this have to place, I believe that a lot of it comes down to our perception on life. And there's this preconceived notion of what people expect us to be or how they expect us to react. And I've never been one to just fall into those categories. When I think about...
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, I mean, the example we'll use is exactly this. Brett, you're not going to train martial arts ever again.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
Okay, exactly. So if I don't train martial arts again and that's the end of it, that's the end of the career, I don't get the bronze medal, we're not sitting here today.
Right. And
maybe I go live my life as ABC and I get a job and I retire and that's done. Or we sit here today after achieving a national medal and also so much. So when I speak about that have to position or leveraging the proper mindset of what you're actually capable of doing, when the leverage is there, when your back is against the wall, you push back. And if I would have given in to those doctors saying, Brett, again, you're not going to train martial arts, let that go, accept it, my life's not where it is today. And I'm grateful for everything that I have. So every decision you make, everything you do in every single aspect of the day-to-day, which is 35,000 decisions, but the majority of them are made subconsciously. You make decisions without even recognizing it. The thing is about subconscious decisions is they weigh in on the important decisions in life. And that's what I talk about the habit, about this preconceived notion of what people want us to do or how society expects us to react.
Take me through that a little bit. What do you mean that the subconscious decisions weigh in on the conscious decision? Can you give me an example? This morning, I had almond butter.
Exactly. So
For part of breakfast.
So you had almond butter for breakfast, you reach into the fridge, you grab your milk. These are subconscious decisions because you built a certain habit. Right? So you've almost programmed yourself to do it that way. And at some point, you're going to say, I don't want almond butter anymore because I've had it for 10 days. That happens with bad nutrition habits. That happens with not wanting to go to the gym today. I'm not going to go. It's raining. That's my subconscious decision. But if the conscious decision was to kick in and say, what are the ramifications if I don't go out on that run today? Or what's going to happen if I don't do this? Or what will happen if I do this? And that's where that leverage comes in. So if it's important enough to you, and if there's a big enough why, take back decisions from your subconscious and decide. And how I do that is by ruling out every other option. Like we talked about the lady lifting up the car. There was no other option. She had to lift up this car. So if I sit down and say, I want to work out today, or I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to say consciously, I'm not going to distract myself with my cell phone. I'm not going to check my emails. I'm not going to sit on the couch and watch Netflix. I'm going to eliminate all other options. The Latin term for decision is to cut off.
Really?
Yeah, so there's no other option at all. So that's how you take back decisions from your subconscious.
So you're not stuck there in an indecisive world or allowing yourself to skitter off down the path of least resistance.
Exactly. I mean, you think about this on a day-to-day basis. You're sitting down, you're working, or whatever it is that you're doing. How many times have you caught yourself down some rabbit hole and you just all of a sudden said, how did I end up here? And that's the subconscious decisions.
You see, I allow myself, I've got something that's maybe on the surface counter to that. And that is that I allow myself once in a while to bail out of workouts, to bail out of training sessions, but I've got to get dressed first, right? If I'm feeling like crap, I'm just exhausted, maybe I had a really tiring night shift the night before, I'm just on the verge of being sick or something, and I don't feel like working out, say, let's keep it to weightlifting.
Okay.
I have to get dressed, I have to go up to the gym. If I get dressed and go up to the gym or go down to my gym or wherever, go to the place of training, and then I still don't feel like it, then I'm allowed to go home. And that happens maybe 2 or 3 times a year. But the other 300 times a year, it gets my ass in the gym. Knowing that there's that escape valve there, if I still feel like crap, it sort of tricks me into going. So I think, is that the opposite of what you're talking about, or is it just a different method to trick yourself?
No, I like this actually, and I think this is a great methodology, and I think there's a lot of reason behind it. And you know your body better than anybody else. And we have experts and specialists telling Brett not to train martial arts, and I respect what they're saying. They know me from a physiological standpoint, but they don't know me as Brett, what I know about my body.
And up here.
Exactly. So when you say to yourself, I'm going to get up and get dressed still, you're committed to going to the gym. You've made a decision that you're going to do those actions. But when you step at the door and you decide that I'm not going to go in, it's for your own health because you want to take a rest day or you need to give your body a bit of a break, take some mental time for you. That is absolutely crucial. And to be able to recognize that and make those decisions is why you are where you are today, and the decisions that you are able to actually make. Where majority of people will just fall into that groove of, I'm just not going to go to the gym, but you recognize that you want to go, but it's best for you not to go to the gym.
Well, I think it's, the perfect way to make toast is to toast it till it burns and then 30 seconds less. I've gone over that point of burning toast with my own body many times. Right? There are many times I've taken a slight cold and turned it into some horrendous flu by toughing on through. So I think with 40 years of experience of training, I'm now, and also getting older, probably less resilient. Maybe 17-year-old Stephan would have been able to, train on through and not get sick. But right, there's the Grouse Grind. It's a hill or mountain close to where we both live. It's my gold standard of cardio. I do that fairly regularly because if nothing else, it allows me to see if I'm getting more or less fit over time. Yesterday I felt pretty tired, did it. A couple months ago I went feeling pretty tired. I drove up there and I sat in the car for about 10 minutes. And then eventually I was like, no. And I turned around and went home. Like I said, that happened once in the last 12 months. But I think for me that was a really useful way to get me to the hill more often. Myself. So when you did start training again after that stoplight moment.
I did.
Okay, so what was that like? What was that process like?
It wasn't easy. And let's just put it that way.
What was your first time throwing a kick?
Okay, well, let me tell you the first time that I actually sat in my bed and I said, today's going to be the day. And I tried to get out and I fall to the ground, or I wouldn't have enough energy to even get downstairs. And okay, today's not going to be the day. That's the same type of thing of, wanting to do something, but not physically being able to do it. Mm-hmm. I know I went through that sequence for quite some time, but then I'd visualize and sit there and be like, what's it going to feel like when I step back on that mat? And I would feel it. Mm-hmm. And I would really feel it, like, that cool sensation on the bottom of my feet, or tying my black belt and feeling it cinch down. It was almost that bit of comfort for me. Mm-hmm. And one day I said, enough's enough, and I'm going to feel what this feels like today. And getting back on the mat and stepping foot on it and tying my belt again was one of the most rejuvenating things I've ever done.
Really?
Yeah. It was, I felt back at home. Mm-hmm. This is where I've spent years, of my life, and to be able to step back here, just get to this place,
sure,
was a huge achievement.
Okay, and then jump spinning back kicks to failure.
Yeah, that took some time, and surprisingly enough, when you get back to that place where you've been many times, it's incredible. Your body still knows.
Your timing might be a bit off. Your endurance is off. Your strength is off, but your body still knows. Your
body knows, and more importantly, mentally. I mean, as soon as I step back on the mat, my mind's like, hey, you can do this. And my body's like, hey, that's not happening. Right? But, it's incredible how fast I can pick things back up. Mm-hmm. And, of course, a lot of it had to do with dieting. I mean, I couldn't really eat a lot of food, so I was juicing majority of my food. So, a lot of vegetables being juiced, and I was pretty much on a liquid diet. So, I couldn't go out there and floor it. But just to be able to get back and actually start moving my body
again. Huge victory. Huge.
Incredible. And the aftermath, the effects of that, when I talk about, being at that crosswalk and having that kid smile back at me, that was that moment that I'd harnessed. And I used that as leverage, changed my perspective on outlook on life. Same thing, again, getting back on the mat. So now I've got these two things compounding on each other. Mm-hmm. That same feeling of getting on the back, tying my belt again after I was told I wasn't going to, compounded on top of everything else. So now I'm building momentum. Mm. And when momentum starts to be built, and I've got a clear outlook and I'm respecting the process, now I'm in a beautiful state.
A sports psychologist once told me that the single biggest thing you can take away from sports psychology is that big victories are built on the backs of small victories. That engineering a sequence of small, challenging victories is the best way to get to a big victory. If your goal had been, I'm going to get back on the mat and then I'm going to compete at nationals the next week, clearly that would have been a fool's errand. But it sounds like your first goal was to put on your uniform, tie your belt, and get on the mat, and then see what happens.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with this philosophy. I mean, it's incredible. It was about compounding things daily. So small, measurable actions that I could take daily and documenting them and setting goals. And it was one thing, like I said, first started with tying my belt, getting back on the mat. Then the next thing that was a certain amount of stretching, then a certain amount of cardio level, then a certain amount of kicks.
So how did you manage this on a liquid diet with the food? Because the stomach issues were still there, the colon issues were still there.
Yeah, absolutely. But I imagine going from nothing to all of a sudden getting a blast of nutrients, being able to juice and getting some intake. It was like my body, it almost was like a newfound energy for me because I was so used to being in a state of calorie deficient.
So down.
Yeah, I was so down that it actually like slingshotted me. And of course, I mean, I had to, manage myself and watch what I was doing, but I had this huge burst of energy. But it was about taking the proper steps and being safe with my training and speaking with my doctors. And it was incredible, actually, after about 2 months of doing this, juicing and training and taking care of myself, when I went back, constantly checking with my doctors, they were floored by my results, like absolutely floored. Even my blood work results, the stability that I had overall taken and the aftermath of everything. Some of these guys were like, we quite frankly, Brett, we don't understand how this was possible. So, keep doing what you're doing. We'll monitor you, of course. And I'm like, well, and we kind of joked with when I was like, well, thanks a lot, docs. Like, I appreciate that. And he says, you're almost defining a lot of physics here with your body and what you're doing. We've never really had such a thing. So we take it as a blessing, however you want. To me, it was still leverage and motivation, and I didn't stop.
Did the stomach keep on getting, or the stomach issues keep on getting better?
They did. And, it's something that I still live with today, but I've gotten to a place where it's manageable and going, once again, knowing your body, you know it better than anybody else. You know what you're intaking, you know what you're eating, you know the thoughts you're thinking.
See, I think a lot of people don't know their body better than anybody else. I think a lot of people are so totally disconnected from their bodies that even if they then were injured and tried to come back, first they'd have to learn their bodies, and then they'd have to go there. I think the martial arts training, obviously when you're competing and training at a high level, you're already doing what every other martial artist is doing. Well, maybe if I eat 12 apples a day, this will make my side kick better. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, maybe if I get some extra sleep or take a nap or do some more stretching or go to a sauna, you're already had 20 years of experimentation on yourself to get in touch with your body. And maybe that's the real benefit of martial arts training.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And there's one thing I'm going to say to that. Whether, for me, it was knowing my body in martial arts. So I use my body to leverage for my sport. But for whatever may be, whether it's any act of business or lifestyle, whatever people are doing, that's their realm. They know that better than anybody else. So whatever it is that you're passionate at, whatever it is you're working on, they know that area. And the big thing is that I'm not going to come in and tell them how to do that better. They know the answers, but for the biggest thing is they have to make a decision to want to make it better.
Right.
They need to make a decision to say, here's where I'm at today, and here's where I want to go. And in between that is simply conscious decisions, not those subconscious decisions. So when I speak about knowing my body, that's
your realm.
That's my realm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the business people you work with, that's their realm.
Absolutely.
It'd be good if they also had some awareness of their bodies so they didn't die, but
sure.
Let's one thing at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I think about things about what we specialize as in individuals, it's very, very important that, of course, nutrition is there, exercise is there, the mental awareness is there. There's a lot of things that, of course, all add into excelling at whatever your realm is. But you know what's best. The problem that I see is people not deciding that they want to do certain things. It's the same story of...
What do you mean not deciding that they want to do certain things? Can you give me... I know you work with athletes, and it's like mental training for athletes. So give me an example of somebody that you've worked with. Change names to protect the innocent, but what was something they decided to not do?
Yeah, here's a perfect example. Working with a female athlete, and she's incredibly talented. She has put in the time in her body.
Can you say what sport?
She's a CrossFit trainer.
Okay.
So training CrossFit, and she says, here's some things that I really, really want to do. And I said, great, what is it that you've been doing to do those things? And it was very vague, and some of the things that she would name, I said, okay, there's some value here.
What was she trying to do?
She essentially wanted to get into her
One-handed push-ups.
Yeah, she essentially wanted to open up her own studio. Okay. And I said, that's great that you want to do these things. What are the steps that you've taken?
Okay.
And here's some questions, and just generic questions. And how hard did you have to push yourself to get to this place? The answers back were very valid, but the actual execution was what was limiting themselves. And when I say about whether it's CrossFit, whether it's athletes, whether it's business, you can sit here and say, oh, I thought about this idea 10 years ago, and I'm still living in my mom's basement watching this person on TV.
Ideas are shit.
Exactly.
Ideas don't matter. Execution is everything.
Execution is everything. And I think the important part is, how do you actually execute?
Sure. What I said is true, but it's simplistic, because that's where people are stuck.
That's it. Yeah. And that's why I say when people don't know how to decide, they say, oh, I want to do this, or do you need to do this, or do you have to do this? Mm-hmm. And if you remove all other options and you decide that you have to do this, because the mind doesn't know the difference between reality, what's in front of us, and what you tell yourself, what you construct.
Are you talking about the mirror neuron phenomenon, or are you talking about something else?
Yeah, no, exactly. That works too. And I'm saying that if we sit here and tell ourselves something over and over and over, for example, I have to do this.
How about this? There are already too many CrossFit studios in the city that I live in. I could never open another. I'd love to have a CrossFit studio. I'm your CrossFit person. I really love CrossFit. I'd love to have my own studio, but there are already too many studios, Brett. There's just too many.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
Sure.
And I can say to you, that's great. So you've already given up, and that's not going to happen. So you've decided that it's not going to happen.
So you're calling me on my bullshit.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's very simple. And that's you are telling yourself that there's already too many. And it's a simple question. I would say, well, based on what? All right. And there's the multiple forms of to what extent are you going to go?
Sure.
Of course. What does your end goal look like? How are you going to reverse engineer this? But how are you going to actually make this tangible? What's something tactical you can do today to better yourself for tomorrow? Yeah. Because you've already given up before you started. And that's why I say people don't know what to do when they decide. When they decide not to do it, that's my prime example.
This is a bit tangential, but I've heard experts talk about don't make lists. Don't make to-do lists, because just the act of writing down your to-do list. Write new blog article about, from my to-do list today, write new blog article about the crucifix armbar attack in jiu-jitsu. The argument is, just by writing down the thing, the brain gets confused and goes, oh, you've already done that. It can't tell the difference between writing it down and doing it. I don't find this to be true at all. If I didn't have lists, I was actually keeping all of my piles of lists. So for some reason it works best if it's on scattered pieces of paper all over the house. And I was keeping all my lists for like 6 months, and it was a pile this high. And then I never did anything with that. It didn't make it on the list to write an article about my list of lists. But that idea of confusing making the plan with executing the plan. Have you run into that?
Absolutely. And let me shine some light on this. And I think it's incredible you say this, because that's your realm. So that's what works for you. And there's a similar analogy where people were actually told to stop taking pictures. So if you're out and you're having this incredible experience of life, for example, I went and trained in Beijing for years, and I'm out training, and I took tons of pictures. Of course I'm going to, right? When I think about today, when I think back to Beijing, I remember the picture.
Oh.
You understand?
Yeah.
So I'm actually picturing myself looking at this picture, because I've looked at the picture so many times. I don't actually remember the surroundings or the environment that I was in. So it's similar to taking down notes or saying don't make it. So if you're going to write something about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today, you might just think about that, and that's what's convoluting the brain. And I think it's fascinating that is a perfect example as to what happens.
See, I don't find that to be the case for me. I'd be lost without my lists. But apparently everybody works differently.
Exactly.
So you need to learn how to light a fire under your own ass.
And that's what's important when you talk about, if you want to achieve something, whether it's in business or opening a gym or CrossFit or athleticism, you have to know yourself. And that's knowing your realm is very, very important. So when I talk about myself, I know my body, or when I talk about what people are capable of doing, you need to know what your passion looks like. You eat and breathe and indulge. And by indulging, jumping in head first, not tippy-toeing around, but committing, starts with making that decision. And as soon as that decision's made, that's when the light gets turned on. That's the enlightening moment for me when I made a decision to change my perspective on life when I saw the boy in the wheelchair or when I stepped back on the mat.
So, I mean, if we wanted to steal Nike's slogan, it's a just do it approach, or take action at all costs. But at the same time, objectively, we fetishize the successes of that. And the guy who started FedEx, like at one point he needed to make payroll. He didn't have payroll. He had about half the money he needed for payroll. I think it was FedEx. And he went to Vegas and basically put it all on red and came back with enough money to make payroll, and now it's one of the biggest companies in the world. We tell that story, and we tell that story as like a total commitment, no other choice, no other options. He was completely dead one way, and he had a chance of succeeding if it went the other way. We don't tell the failure stories. We don't talk about XFed, the other competing company, which also wasn't going to make payroll, and the guy went down to Vegas and lost it all, and that company died on the vine and never succeeded. We're only cherry picking the success stories. So how do you square that? I totally agree that you need 100% commitment in a jiu-jitsu context. If you're going to go for the armbar, bloody go for the armbar. But it's not always going to work, and sometimes it could make things worse.
Right, but you have to go for it, right? And that's with anything, whether it's, again, sports or business, you have to make that decision, and you have to commit 100%. And the most important thing about commitment is that you're not always going to get through. And when you don't get through, that's what I call as failing. Okay, failing is super important. Not failure. Failure means you've given up.
Okay.
Failing is learning.
All right.
That's a certain perspective. If you can respect the fact that anything you do today, you're going to get better, whether you win or lose, you are still going to get better.
Sure. Did you win 100% of your sparring matches?
Of course not.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Really? Get out of
Big
here.
Surprise.
Leave.
And I've competed and trained with so many athletes and coached so many athletes that, of course, nobody likes to lose.
No.
But again, if it's not losing and it's learning, it all of a sudden becomes enjoyable. Yeah. And when you recognize that you can take something away from any moment, from anyone at any time, and utilize that to your advantage and implement it to your training or your business, and all of a sudden you're becoming a better version of yourself for tomorrow, now you've got the advantage.
I think it was Chuck Norris, not the mythical Chuck Norris who, pushes the earth away from him when he does push-ups, but the real Chuck Norris who used to compete in karate, who once said he'd never lost a karate match. And one of his students said, but Master Chuck, you actually have lost karate. And he said, no, I didn't lose any of them because I learned something in every one. So he redefined losing. It's not losing, it's learning.
Exactly. And the thing is that, okay, it sounds great, but I'm not going to lie. Okay.
It feels pretty damn good.
Yeah. And when you get knocked out or you get hit bad and you lose a match, it hurts and it sucks. And like I said, in a great, perfect world, I can say, hey, I'm learning, but I'm being realistic. Mm-hmm. There's moments where it's tough and you need to dig deep, peel back those layers and really dissect what actually happened. Mm-hmm. And once you find the win, find the learning in there, take back that control. That's the most crucial part to failing.
Yeah, it changes the narrative in your mind, as opposed to, oh, damn it, like that was a terrible match. It gives you the start of the trajectory back into success. That was a terrible match, and I'm going to learn that setup for that jump spinning hook kick or whatever, that arm bar, and I'm going to use it myself, and I'm going to tap him out with it. It recontextualizes that experience.
Absolutely.
So let's go back to the business thing, because I know you've worked with businesses on the back of your, we're talking about a bunch of things here. You did a TED Talk that I really like. People should check it out. If they Google your name and TED, they should find it. And since then, I know you've been working with athletes and businesses. Can you talk a little bit how you apply the learnings from martial arts in a business context? We sort of have been, but give an example. Give some more specific examples.
And thank you for that. I think the biggest thing is the discipline that martial arts has taught me. And it's about learning and becoming a better version of who I am. And that's why we train so much. That's why we're so detailed when it comes to our nutrition and how much time we're committing to stretching and how we're intervaling, documenting our training. All of these things that create a great athlete or an incredible performance translate into business and to whatever it is that you do in life. So when I speak to different companies, different organizations for coaching and direction, the majority of it is based around what are you doing today to make yourself a better version of tomorrow. And the biggest thing is that accountability piece. If I don't hold myself accountable, I'm going to get knocked out. I'm going to get hurt. If they don't hold themselves accountable, what's going to happen?
Give me an example of how an organization can keep itself accountable. Like I run a running shoe store.
Sure. And I think, so we own a running shoe store, and I think this is what is so important when I say your back's against the wall. If you own a running shoe store and you want to achieve X, Y, Z as your goal, and you're sitting in this place today, you need to find the leverage to hold yourself accountable. That leverage would be, if you don't do this, you're going to lose your business. If you don't do this, you are now going to affect 10, 20, 100 people's lives by having to let them go.
Right.
Whatever your leverage is. So that why you want to do this has to be, really tugged on and clearly identified to make sure we can build yourself a proper plan.
So when you say leverage, you mean, say I run this running shoe empire and I have 100 people working for me. And let's say I'm super motivated by the care and feeding of these employees / friends / extended family. This is what drives me. So you're saying use that as leverage to then take it to the next level, or to make sure at least that this whole enterprise doesn't collapse.
Exactly. If this is what drives you, which I think would be an incredible attribute, is being able to give back and pass on and help support people, then why are you only doing it for 100 people? Mm-hmm. Why are you not doing it for 1,000?
Okay.
Right? So we need to find what's important. If I was to tell you, okay, you're just starting your running shoe business. It's brand new. You're just getting it off the ground. Let's set up a certain goal for you to get to, selling 100 pair of shoes by the week. If I said, if you don't do it, it's okay. You're starting out, you're training and you're learning and so forth. That's fine. But if I said to you, Stephan, you have to sell 100 pairs of shoes. And if you don't, you're going to cut me a check for $25,000. You think you take a different approach?
100%.
Exactly. So we got to find that leverage. Yeah. And at what point is it going to cost? And I'm not talking about the financial aspect.
Sure.
I'm trying to find the organic, natural one that drives you as an individual. What are your core values? What are your beliefs? What's important to you? Mm-hmm. And when you talk about giving back and helping support people, I guarantee you'll find a way to sell those 100 shoes.
I think it was Tim Ferriss who was speaking with the Jewish guy who wrote the book A Year of Living Biblically, where he tried to follow every injunction in the Old Testament, from not wearing mixed fibers through to not sitting on chairs that menstruating women had sat on, to stoning adulterers, which is a bit tricky in modern day New York City. I think he solved that by throwing little tiny pebbles at people sitting on park benches who he assumed were not married. But they were talking about the power of sort of negative motivation. Like, if I don't do this, I think he said he'd committed to writing a check to the Ku Klux Klan. Wow. Right? It wasn't sort of positive motivation. It's like, if I don't actually do this, I'm going to do something positive for somebody that I despise, or I'm going to do something terrible. So then it was a motivation to not, write a check to the Ku Klux Klan. Right. Wow. I hope I'm not butchering that story.
No, but that's a great analogy. And there's something else I can add to this.
So as opposed to writing a check to you, it'd be...
yeah, exactly. But so imagine this. So people are like, Brett, I don't know what I want to do with my life. So they're coming to me, they want to train or they want to learn something, whether it's whatever it may be, but I don't know exactly what it is that I want to do. And I've heard this more than I can even count. And I said, that's fine, but tell me what you don't want to do. All right? Tell me what you don't want in your life. And leverage starts from there. So if you don't want to do this, then we're going to do the complete opposite of what would get you there, to that place, and to push you to a new direction. And when you start that momentum in that new direction, it's incredible the doors that open. So many things will become aware to you that you may never even imagined before. And I've had this happen so many times, especially with athletes. When you're competing for something so hard and all of a sudden you're done competition, okay, time to hang up the belts, you're going to put in the retirement. Well, now what?
And so many athletes have never given this 5 seconds of thought until the end of their competition career.
That's it. And that's fine. And you know what?
They almost need to be myopic to succeed. Like, now what?
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you talk about that 100% commitment, they're committed there. They're not worried about tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's very important. But when you hang up that belt, it's extremely important to recognize, okay, here I am. I'm going to live in this present moment. it's time to figure out some stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that doesn't happen. Similar when people get hurt, an injury. Okay, well, all of a sudden they're pushing on the sideline. Now what? You've taken away everything that you've worked towards. It's gone, and there's almost nothing you can do about it. And that's where that mental mindfulness really takes a huge impact and comes into play.
I'm a big fan of, especially athletes, because I interact with a lot of MMA fighters who run into this problem inevitably. Like I was talking with Cajun Johnson yesterday, actually, and he pointed out that the average lifespan of a fighter in the UFC is 3 fights.
Wow.
Of course, there's some guys who are fighting 20, 30 fights, and some guys are still fighting 20 years later. Most of them, 3 fights in the UFC. And then they get busted back down to the lower leagues where they're not really making any money. So I think, especially from an MMA thing, which is inherently a short-lived process, the odds of getting injured, and I'm sure it's the same as Taekwondo, you could have had a catastrophic femur snap or something that realistically would have put an end to your training at any point. Well, maybe not a femur snap, maybe a better example. But 99% or 100% focus when you're training, 99% focus when you're not training, but 1% of laying the groundwork for other things. I mean, my example is I did a master's in botany, Arctic botany. It was a very interesting time in my life. I got to go to the Arctic for a summer. I got to spend 3 months living out on the tundra near Tuktoyaktuk.
Wow.
Doing climate change stuff. Yes, climate change is real. And then I finished. Actually, broke a leg, which allowed me to finish my thesis in record time because I couldn't train, I couldn't goof off, I couldn't exercise. So I just sat and typed. Finish in February. There's no work for botanists in February, or March, or April, or May, maybe June, maybe July. So finishing that, and then, hey, I've got my master's, and nobody wants to hire me at all because I hadn't spent any time giving any thought to making connections after that. I mean, my first job after finishing as a botanist was working as a maid for like $12 an hour, cleaning people's houses, not knowing what the hell I was doing. And that didn't feel real good. I mean, I did it because I had to do it. Jobs wanted, made. I'll apply. I think the housewife who hired me was just mainly amused by this big lunking guy to come in.
Can I clean your place?
So I wish I'd had spent a little bit more time. Not much, but some time making connections or thinking about the after. But we're digressing.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. I mean, I think it's important that you're going to go through different phases and different stages in your life. And if you can think back to what you learned from that time, that said, okay, well, you know what? I had to suck it up and say, screw it, I need to get back to work.
Yeah.
I got to find a way to make money. And you made a decision and you did it. But there's learning in everything.
Yeah.
And sure, I don't know how much you can say that certain botany time played into your martial arts today, but I believe there is still value. There's value that's transferable in so many things. So if you think about it as value, it's now leverage, as opposed to thinking about it as time wasted.
Oh, I don't think of it as time wasted. I think just thinking about things scientifically and having an organizational schema for approaching things has helped me, and even just being able to write has there's transference there.
Great.
Enough about me though. So let's jump back to and working with businesses. So can you give me another example of how once they've established that leverage, what's next? They've decided, damn it, I'm going to take this running shoe store to a chain. I want 5 outlets by the same time next year as opposed to just 1. What is a sort of a strategy that they can use to grow? Now they've got the leverage, they've got the motivation, but they don't know what to do next. They're lacking the tactic.
Got it. So this is when you think big picture and you break it into small fundamental actions that you can actually execute daily. And I'm going to use the shoe and martial arts as an aspect. Sure. If all of a sudden I say, I need to work on my sidekick, it needs to be 3 inches higher. Okay, what are the things that I can do today that are going to help me get to where I want to be? Well, I understand that's not going to happen overnight. Of course, there's going to be stretching involved. But what type of inflammation decreasers can I take from nutrition? What will help me heal? What will help me recover? So these are all things that play in that generally get pushed to the wayside, especially when it's a big picture business. So when you talk about your shoe factory or your shoe place taking it franchised, what are the tactics that are going to take you to get to where you want to go? So it's about recognizing where you want to go, where you are today, the steps in between, but making it manageable. And what I mean by that is there's no greater feeling than victory. So it's not about setting a goal and achieving that goal and saying, okay, now what? It's about what am I doing today specifically that's going to help compound for tomorrow on tomorrow's, task or whatever it may be, tangible. And then what's going to happen in the following day. So it's about making micro steps that are measurable daily because measurement is so crucial. And there's days where you're going to go up and there's days you're going to go down. Those days that you go down, there is learning there. What did you do? How are you going to make it better?
So in your Taekwondo career, I'm assuming you kept notes about your training.
Absolutely.
So if you went to a training session, what might you write? You didn't just say training 7 to 9 p.m., or did you?
There was days where, when I was going through this process of learning and I thought I was, let's call it maybe a little bit better than I was. And this is something that happens. And I went through a big streak for 5 years where I was undefeated in BC.
Okay, that's very impressive.
Thank you. And I learned the hard way that don't get a chip on your shoulder and respect all forms of athleticism and respect everything that you see in front of you. Don't judge a book by its cover. And the reaction to that was me getting knocked unconscious by somebody I would have least expected it.
Was this in China?
It was.
Tell that story, because that's a fantastic story. You tell it in your TED Talk, and it's
So I was coming
great.
off, as highlights. I mean, it was an incredible run for me. I had lost a match in 5 years in BC. And I get to China, and I landed, and I was jet-lagged, and I was tired, and I didn't speak a word of Mandarin, and I was kind of ahead of the rest of my team. And I get there, and I speak zero English, and this master's...
Zero Mandarin.
Sorry, zero Mandarin, thank you. And the master looks at me, who speaks zero English, and he kind of points to me, and he points to a different side of the gym, and he makes these two fists, and he clashes them together, which is kind of the universal hand signal to fight. And I look over, and I'm like, well, there's nobody really there. And he's pointing. So I finally go to the other side of the gym, and there's nobody there but a girl. And she couldn't have been a day older than 15. And I'm looking back at this guy, and he's pointing at me, and he's pointing at this girl, and he's like, yes, fight her. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? I flew to China to train with some of the best athletes in one of the most well-renowned schools for martial arts. And they want me to fight a girl.
A Taekwondo school.
This is a huge international sports facility where the majority of athletes from all of China train for the Olympics.
Okay.
But there's athletes from all around the world that go there to train because it's an incredible facility. And I said to myself, they want me to fight a girl? I don't even care. I'll fight a girl then. Fine. We're kind of give and take, exchanging a little bit. And this girl means business. And I realized she's kicking pretty hard. And I could, hey, listen, I haven't lost in 5 years. I'm going to show you I know what's up. And I go to just kind of lay into her a little bit to kind of give her a bit of a push. Don't come at me that hard. I'm going to hit you back hard. I'm not going to go light on you. And the next thing I remember is that honorable master leaning over me, waving his hands, yelling at me with his eyes wide open. He's screaming hello. And she knocked me unconscious, man. She absolutely knocked me out. And it's funny, and I tell this story.
With
I
what?
laugh. She did an incredible spinning hook kick, which I didn't even see coming, and I had to talk to her about it after. I went in for kind of one of my, it's called a pichagi, which is a sliding back turning kick. And I wanted to hit her good, and she was 3 steps ahead of me, and I didn't even see it coming.
You were totally set up.
God, she completely
by the
set
master and by her.
Well, the thing is that this is what's amazing is that, and this is what I talk about setting up, is I went in with the mentality of, hey, listen, I don't need to fight you, and she went with the mentality of, I'm going to
kill you.
Exactly. And she'd watched everything that I did, where I was just more warming up and saying, here I am, I'm going to train, I'll push you around a little bit, no problem. And she was watching every single thing I did. And that's that analytical side of martial arts. And she'd set me up. And she'd watched my movement, my toe placement, how I was sliding back and forward, what types of kicks I was doing in a matter of 30 seconds. And she calculated it that fast, and I fell right into her trap. But that's that whole motto. And that's why I say that at different points in your life, you may become complacent. You may become unaware of certain things. And it's got to go back to that mentality of learning. It's got to go back to that mentality of what am I doing today to better for myself for tomorrow, and keeping yourself in check. And I think I look back at that moment, and a lot of people, they laugh at me and I make fun of myself. And I said, but you don't understand the learning I got from that. And they're like, dude, you got beat up by a girl. You're a 3rd-degree black belt. And I'm like, Dude, I don't care. I learned so much from that moment that I speak about today. And that was in 2006.
Yeah. You've gotten a ton of mileage out of that event. So
Exactly.
it's totally worth it.
Exactly. Like I said, for me, it's one of those things that I'm going to put up on the shelf as a highlight moment in my life. And people look at me funny, and I say, you know what, that's fine. You look at me funny, but everybody has those moments. The important thing is to not neglect them, cherish them, use them as leverage.
And how do you interpret them?
Well, exactly.
You could have, I'm not saying you should have, but I suck. I got beat up by a girl. Screw this Taekwondo stuff. I'm going home. Where are the Doritos?
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm done. They could have done that.
Yep.
And certainly we have seen martial artists stomp off the mat after they got their asses handed to them by somebody they didn't think they should get their asses handed to by.
Yep.
That's a complicated sentence. I think it was correct. But guess what? Those guys never got good.
Exactly. And when I think about where I am today, it's moments like that have defined who I am and made me this person. And again, it's all on how you want to perceive it.
Okay. So let's go back to this documentation thing. What kind of documentation were you personally keeping when you were training? Like, give me an example of what an entry for a day might have looked like.
Sure. So if we'll use the sidekick one, for example, because that was a legitimate thing. When I was competing in the form side of things for martial arts, for Taekwondo, it's very, very technical. So every inch matters so much. So I wanted to raise my sidekick by 3 inches. So I said to myself, well, in order to do this, I need to work on, or first identify where I currently am. So documentation would look like, took a full measurement of stretching where I am today at my maximum stretching with a certain amount of warm up and proper movement, so I could be at my most flexible point. Okay. I'd measure that, and then I would take a look at, again, what type of nutritions are going to help with inflammation, what type of things would impact my body to.
So what would you write down for the nutrition thing? So curcumin or
yeah, exactly. In turmeric, cumin, what type of things would decrease, and I would also write down my intake for the day, and I would also write down within reason X amount of calories and protein intake.
Okay.
So it was very scripted, so I could look back on a certain day and say I didn't feel too well. I wonder if it had an impact with this. Being Italian, I eat a lot of pasta. Well, that's not very good in certain aspects, but it was one of those things that I couldn't steer clear from, and I enjoyed it. But
Your cultural duty.
Exactly, but I did notice in certain forms it actually really impacted my training.
Which forms were the worst and what were the best?
You know what? There you can have a balanced nutrition. Well, pasta is generally not too balanced, and when you load up on the carbohydrates, there's a huge spike in insulin, and all of a sudden.
I think even the form like fettuccine versus vermicelli. Fettuccine's got a much lower glycemic index because it takes longer to digest.
Exactly.
So
when you think about things like that.
But it's both made of semolina. Like it's the same.
And it's amazing. It's fascinating when you think about that. When people don't understand what they put in their body and how it'll impact them and the ramifications of that, it's incredible. Mm-hmm. And when you're training at a high level, those are the minute differences, the small differences that people make that separate the greats from the unstoppable.
It's amazing how many people. I don't know, they live in San Diego, and if you said, hey, you could fill that sports car up with Tijuana gas.
Yeah.
There's Mexican gas there, it's, half the price.
Yeah.
They'd look at you and go, you are out of your effing mind.
Yeah.
Why would I do that to my car? They're only going to own that car for 10 years.
Yep.
You're going to own your body for the rest of your life, yet they're dumping all kinds of hey, sure. Look, big gulps are on sale. You can get 3 big gulps with infinite refills.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so much worse for your body than Tijuana gas is
for sure.
Your car.
And that's your body we're talking about, right?
Yeah, you live in your body.
That's it.
You could take the bus if you had to.
This is another thing that I speak to people in business is the impact that the small things that you think is small that are actually creating massive, huge issues in the future.
Can you give me an example of how that would apply in business? How the little details would apply in business?
Absolutely. I was working with a gentleman, and he was kind of giving me I would call it what I call service, the eye glazing, generic responses. So nothing tangible. For example, he was saying his business is down due to demographics, due to traffic is down, things that are out of his control. Right. And I asked him, okay, well, that's fine. That's great. But walk me through your day. What does it look like? And he kind of went right into the business aspect again. I kind of do this. I kind of do that. Nothing specific. I said, well, let's stop right away. Right when you get up, first thing you do, what is it? And he says, I reach my phone.
Like every other human being on the planet.
Exactly. They've created some kind of subconscious habit that they need to pick up their phone and check their social media, whatever it may be. And he's going through his emails and he says, I can't do this and that. And I said, okay. And I said, he says, and I get to work. I said, well, what did you do for breakfast? And he says, well, I don't really eat breakfast in the morning at the house. I'll make coffee or I usually grab something along the way. And I said, okay, so how do you feel after that? And he says, I don't know, normal, I guess. And I said, okay, well, what does normal look like? He says, I don't know, actually. Now that you say it, I've never really thought about it. I said, okay, so you get to work at 9 o'clock. What's the first few things you start doing? He said, well, I get there at 9, but okay, Brett, let me be honest with you. Then I don't really start doing anything until about 10 or 10:30, I guess. I get to work, kind of surf the internet, I check my website stuff, I check my emails again, and I start picking up the phone around 10:30, 11. And I said, okay, well, why do you think that is? He's like, I don't know. And I'd recognize right away is that he'd created a habit by skipping breakfast or not taking care of himself, not watching anything that he puts in his body, that when guy got to work, he had this massive spike of an unbalanced diet, and all of a sudden he's crashing, and it's first thing in the morning. Yeah. And he says, I don't really feel that great.
Sets the stage for the whole he doesn't have that early win, for one thing, so the momentum goes off in the wrong direction.
You talked about making the bed, get that early win, all that kind of stuff. And so he's already set the path for his day. So right from that point, I said, let's just change one thing to start. And let's focus on what does it look like first thing in the morning when you get up? And I gave him a couple tangible things to do. And again, because when you set up your day in a negative state or in a failing state, and it's not learning because your mind's not in the right place, productivity decreases. We changed just a few minor tweaks that had nothing to do with his business, but more of his personal aspect, that radically changed everything in a matter of 3 days. 3 days.
Talk about an amazing win in a short period of time. That you shouldn't be able to change an entire business in 3 days.
You're right, and these are things that, and again, he created a habit, unrecognizing like what actually was going on, and that's why it's so important to look yourself in the mirror once in a while and hold yourself accountable. And when people say that, I spend too much time on my phone, or okay, I'm aware of that, but that's what everybody else does. I don't care what everybody else does. Everybody else is in their positions because that's what they do.
Everybody else is working at 7-Eleven. If you don't want to work at 7-Eleven,
that's it. And that's when I said to the same girl that was training CrossFit, I said, if you don't want to open your gym, that's fine. But you're telling me you do. But everything you're doing is saying otherwise.
Yeah. It's incredibly frustrating when people state an ambition, which is great, have an ambition, but then aren't doing the things that get them there. And maybe it's just, I think sometimes it's just, some people just want to be able to tell, I've got this dream. Well, who's it who said like a dream without a plan, a goal without a dream is just I got it. A goal without a plan is just a dream.
That's it, exactly.
Third time lucky.
You got it. And there's, of course, I respect all athletes.
Sure.
Whether it's martial arts or Olympic athletes or CrossFit, and Matt Fraser, who's an incredible athlete, one of the fittest men in the world in CrossFit, he said when he won the CrossFit Games, he said people don't see the late nights, the early mornings, when I'm pushing myself to limits that I've never been.
Sure.
The small details. They think, oh, this guy, he's just genetically born that way. He's just gifted. Exactly.
No. It's like in business, the equivalent saying there is people only see the addition, they don't see the subtraction.
Beautiful statement. And that's exactly what we help identify.
Yeah. Let's do a very hard pivot here, because as a Taekwondo guy, I've got to be honest with you, Taekwondo has been kind of my whipping boy, talking about it in terms of martial arts businesses that are kind of like puppy mills, right? Getting 100 kids in, and they're all in their black belt program. And then 3 years later, they all have junior black belts. And it kind of, I've ranted about this at various times.
Yeah, and I support your rant. And I'll rant with you. And, to give you some context, so when I first started training martial arts, I started in Southern California. And I trained for, a number of years. And then when I came up...
In Taekwondo?
In Taekwondo, yeah. And when I came back to Vancouver, when I found out who I wanted to train with, I spoke with him. I kind of said, hey, here's where I'm at. This is who I am. This is what I trained. And he asked me to show him a few things. And he said, okay, that's great. You're going to start at a white belt.
Wow. Was this a switch from like ITF to WTF?
No, it was still both WTF.
Oh, really?
Yeah, both WTF.
So he totally didn't respect your rank? Or
It was out of respect. But he said, listen, I understand you put in the time. I can clearly see that. He says Taekwondo is formed Taekwondo, the way of the hand, the way of feet, has a certain fundamentals, and I teach a certain way. And if you want to train with me, then I will respect your decision. If you don't, but if you do, we got to start at the very beginning, the fundamentals.
Interesting.
And at this time right away, I was like, kind of like, well, in my mind, the first thing that flashed was like, well, screw you, I'll go somewhere else. But then I realized that if he's willing to tell me straightforward, to be brutally honest, I see what you're doing, but I want to teach you this way, then he obviously understands something that I don't.
Okay.
And if I can understand, or to learn to understand, then I'm going to learn much greater things than what's just on the surface, being my white belt.
Sure.
So I respected it. And I started training, and there was 5 belts. That's it.
Wait, Taekwondo with 5 belts?
5 belts.
How many stripes? How many stars?
Not
how
15 and not whatever. And he said,
The
listen.
proliferation of belts and stripes and degrees and is crazy.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And he said, what did your goals look like? And I said, well, I want to be a black belt. And he says, okay, what's your time frame of that? And I said, well, I mean, with just where I am, I think I can kind of speed through this, maybe 2 years. And he says, listen, this is a martial arts studio. This is not a business. And I said to him, I'm like, what does that mean? And now that I have a better understanding, I get it. Because when you talk about people signing up for their black belt programs, it's like a factory. They're pumping out black belts in 2 years, and it's just, and again, with all due respect, it's almost like a cash grab. Yeah. And I'm not saying that all martial arts or Taekwondo or karate schools are businesses. Don't get me wrong. There's obviously massive learning and value there.
Sure.
So understand that, and I respect that. But there's just different types of training. Mm-hmm. And when he said, listen, it's going to take time. You expect to be training for years and years before you get to your black belt. And I've been training with him for almost 20 years now, and I'm a 3rd degree black belt, and it's taken me that long.
Well, I think right there, the fact that you're an adult training, or how old were you when you came up? 14?
Yeah, I started training competitive really tough when I was about 16, 17 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's where the age that most Taekwondo people are dropping out.
Right.
Most of them, I don't know what the typical arc is, say sign up at 8, drop out at 12.
You're right in that realm for sure.
Yeah. I could be wrong by a couple of years, but the general, so the fact that it's an adult training in Taekwondo is unusual in and of itself. I recognize that the competition, competitive adults are a brand unto themselves. But did he not rely on a puppy mill model to pay the bills?
And sure, you got to pay the bills. Right?
And it's not a bad thing. If
No.
you don't pay the bills, you don't teach anybody.
Exactly. But his methodology was quite a bit different than the majority of things that I see today.
Okay.
And it wasn't so much about, let's get as many kids through this thing as we can. It's about teaching a certain level of martial arts that's going to be the best that he can teach. And it's going to cost you X amount of dollars. So it's almost that maybe financial, it's relative. You mean both might make the same amount of money, but you're just getting a different product.
Right.
And when you talk about putting your Tijuana gas in your car, you're going to say you're crazy. And that's a similar analogy I would use for martial arts training. Do your research prior to just jumping into any school.
Yeah. Don't call every place, ask how much they are, and then pick the cheapest place.
Exactly. 100%. And you're going to get what you pay for. And again, I'm not saying that there's not learning.
But the most expensive place isn't necessarily the best place either.
Exactly. If somebody's charging huge money, it doesn't mean you're going to get great, huge training. You got to do your research on who this.
There was a school in Los Angeles years ago. I think it was SCARS, like Scientific Controlled Aggression Response System or something. And their selling point was, we are the most expensive school in Los Angeles. And I want to say $500 a month, something like that.
Yep.
And it was crap with a capital K. Like, it was horrendous.
And they were probably packed, weren't they?
I don't know.
Okay.
I know the school was I know the school was super expensive, and I saw video footage of what they were teaching, and it was almost like, I don't know, Sistema crossed with Tai Chi, and like then you hit the person here and they fall down, and it was crazy.
Wow.
But so the most expensive place isn't necessarily the best, but you do get what you pay for.
Exactly.
So what about this proliferation of belts? I mean, I started Emperado Method Kachikembo. When I started that, 3 belts, white, brown, black.
Right.
When I started jiu-jitsu, there were no stripes. And now jiu-jitsu has gone the way of the stripe. And I mean, obviously it's a student retention mechanism, and sometimes it's a cash grab as well. Oh, you get an extra stripe, $50.
Right. And this is where I get a little torn, because when I talk about writing down and setting a measurable tactic or a goal and achieving it, it's very important. So there's ways to reward yourself or reward somebody, hence a stripe. And I think when people think about, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to put in 5 or 10 years to become a black belt, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult at certain aspects.
It takes a special kind of crazy to be able to focus that far.
Exactly. And when we talk about that special kind of crazy, because we can relate, we understand that there's something greater, not at the end, but during the process of this. I don't care about a stripe. I care about what I'm learning today that I can use for the rest of my life. That's what's greater for me. That's what I can use this to translate into something else in my life. Where a lot of people get fallen into that category of normal, or what normal is supposed to be like. The guy's working at 7-Eleven. Oh, I train martial arts. My parents threw me into it. I just kind of do it. They don't recognize what's in front of them. And that's why I say to people, if you open your eyes to what's actually in front of you, what you can take is incredible. When I say you can learn something from anybody at any time, at any place.
Sure.
There's so much value surrounding us every single day, but we're buried in our phones, or we're so worried about whatever somebody else is going to say.
You speak, arguably it saved your life.
Absolutely.
So, you can't get a higher endorsement than that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But, I agree with you. Like, I'm torn as well. I make fun of the proliferation of stripes and belts and special yellow dots for, saying us the right number of times in a class or whatever the incentivization is. And I am heavily influenced by, there's a book I read, I think it's called Punished by Rewards, years ago. It's probably one of the top 5 books that have influenced my life. And it talked about how offering an incentive structure can change your relationship to what you're doing. Because then people start doing the terrible activity to get the nice rewards. If hypothetically, if you didn't have stripes and didn't have belts, people would train and they would develop a love for the martial arts. But if they start chasing the belt and start chasing the stripes, now all of a sudden you get to this thing like, well, he got his 3rd stripe and I didn't get my 3rd stripe and I hate this, I'm quitting. Or I'm going to train, but only until I get a 3rd stripe. And, people quitting and getting resentful and getting mad at their teachers and stuff like that for not getting a promotion. I'm sure you've seen that 1,000 times.
Oh, countless times. Countless. And when you think about that, when you see kids that are, or adults even, that are upset because somebody else got a stripe and they didn't, the biggest thing that I would say to them is, forget the stripe, forget the belt, forget everything that's in front of you right now. You're teaching a martial art, and I'd ask them, what's their goal with this? What is it that you want to learn? Do you want to learn to defend yourself so you don't get your ass kicked in the street? Or is it to implement some discipline into your mental stability? Or what is it? And a lot of people don't know. And, I don't know, maybe it started because my parents threw me into Taekwondo when I was a kid. And now all of a sudden, I'm kind of bouncing around, I'm doing some kicking stuff, and chances are when I get my black belt, I'll probably still get my butt kicked out in the street. But it's very important to identify these things for these people. And once they actually realize that maybe there's more to it than just a stripe, that there's, again, a lot more here that I can actually take away and do something with, man, change that perspective.
Don't confuse the finger pointing at the moon with the moon.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't confuse the stripe for what the hell it is that you're doing.
I got my ass kicked by a 15-year-old girl.
Boom.
Okay.
Mic drop.
Yeah, that's that.
And came away. Okay. What? If you could leave one message for the people listening or watching this, what would it be?
There's a gentleman by the name of Tim Grover. He wrote a book called Relentless. He used to be Michael Jordan's trainer. And he demanded more from himself than anybody else. And my message would be, whatever you want to achieve in life, whatever your dreams are, those are real. Like, there's something there that makes you sleep at night and think about this, or wake up your eyes and say, that's what I want to do. You're capable of doing it. People are doing it all the time. It's just a matter of leveraging the discipline behind the decisions, cutting out your subconscious decisions, and getting after it, and just doing the work. And by doing the work, document it. Set measurable, tactical, tangible things you can do today that are going to get you that much closer tomorrow. And the second you start writing things down that you can measure, hence the 3 inches about a higher side kick, when you make those steps and you get that 1 inch and then 2 inches, the reward is so much bigger than what you think it is. And it's about making these small steps that start with decisions. Tim Grover says it best. He says,
you said it pretty good too.
Thank you. The thing that separates the goods and the greats and the unstoppable isn't much. It's just a matter of opening your eyes and getting it done. Being relentless and demanding more from yourself than anybody else.
Yeah. Well, coming from you, I accept that.
Thank you, sir.
If people want to see what you're up to or follow you, you do have a website?
I do, yeah. It's vancitybrett.ca
Okay.
and vancitybrett on Instagram as well.
Okay. And you are working with athletes and businesses and one-on-one coaching and group coaching as well?
Absolutely, yeah. One-on-one, so individual coaching, whether it's performance, mental fortitude, or it's small businesses or corporations.
Right.
I've got quite a corporate background.
Awesome. We didn't talk about that. We'll talk about that another day. It's amazing to see people apply lessons from martial arts in their whole lives, and it's amazing to see it succeed. So thanks for coming down today.
Thank you, sir.
Let's go film some Taekwondo stuff.
Let's do that. Pleasure.